Ancient Dark Chosen One secrets revealed, what they hide about shadow lineages. There are truths that don't show up in books, codes that weren't meant to be written down, frequencies passed not through words, but through blood, through breath, through memory so deep it only unlocks when your old self collapses. These are the truths of the shadow lineages, and what I'm about to share has been hidden not just from the masses, but from those on the path who think awakening is only about light. It's not. Awakening isn't the end, it's the threshold. And for the dark chosen ones, the journey doesn't lead up into the heavens. It leads inward into the black chambers of remembrance where real power has been waiting, untouched, for lifetimes. You've likely felt it already, even if you didn't have language for it. That pull in your bones. The sudden awareness that no matter how many mantras you recite, how many times you raise your vibration, something deeper is calling. Something heavier, not lower, just denser, truer. A pull back to something that can't be explained through light codes or angelic frequencies. And this is what the system, the false light, the spiritual echo chambers never wanted you to realize. That shadow isn't the enemy. It's ancestry. That the parts of you that feel too dark, too raw, too dangerous, are actually your oldest allies.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
What if the gifts you thought you had to silence were actually the signs you were chosen to carry a frequency most cannot hold? What if your emotional volatility, your need for isolation, your obsession with death, transformation, and destruction were not trauma responses, but lineage markers? Every dark chosen one I've ever encountered, every real initiate who's walked beyond the veil, carries one thing in common: the codes of ancient order embedded in their chaos. They are systems breakers and grid reprogrammers. They were born into distortion not to escape it, but to become immune to it, so they could correct it from the inside out. The truth is, the original mystery schools didn't separate light from dark. That's a modern deception. In the old temples, the highest initiates had to pass through shadow rituals, not just conceptually, but through visceral embodiment. Their spiritual power wasn't tested by how well they could love it, was tested by how much of their shadow they could stand inside without flinching. You weren't allowed to lead unless you could sit in absolute darkness and not lose your truth. That's what made someone chosen, not their ability to glow, but their ability to carry the weight of what others reject. And here's where it gets even more hidden. These lineages were feminine in origin, but not the soft, maternal feminine. I'm talking about the dark feminine, the destroyer, the womb, the keeper of blood and bone, the power to end what no longer serves, the gatekeeper between dimensions. Many of you feel this rising inside of you, and you've been told to suppress it, to turn it down, to be more palatable. But this force doesn't quiet, it devours. And it isn't gendered. Men carry it too. Anyone with this code, regardless of their body, becomes a portal for what the earth has forgotten how to hold, the power of destruction as sacred function. So what happens when these codes start to wake up in you? Your life doesn't just change. It begins to unmake itself. You lose things, you lose people, you lose identities. Not because you're failing, but because you're being recalibrated. Every illusion you built to survive in the old world gets stripped away. Because your frequency can't fit inside false constructs. This is when most people panic. They think they're breaking down. But in truth, you're breaking through. You're being returned to your original instruction, your pre-incarnational agreement to act as a living reboot system for this collapsing matrix. This is why dark chosen ones are targeted early. You're not born into peaceful lives. You're born into karmic contracts so thick with distortion you have no choice but to wake up. Why? because the pain activates the code. The pressure activates the power. You were never meant to be coddled. You were meant to be forged. And once the forging is complete, you become unstoppable, not in the way of force, but in the way of truth. You carry a signal that can't be mimicked. People feel it before they understand it. They respond without knowing why. Some will be drawn to you like moths to a flame. Others will run, not because of who you are, but because of what you activate. And that activation is not accidental. It's strategic. Your field isn't random, it's been encoded with shadow frequencies that destabilize distortion. You don't need to say a word. Your presence alone begins the unraveling. That's what the ancient ones meant when they talked about walking temples. The ones whose bodies were prayers, whose breath was ritual, whose lives were the gateway between the old and the new. So I need to ask you something, and not just lightly. I want this to land in the marrow of your being. If the power you've been suppressing is the same power your ancestors once wielded with reverence, are you willing to stop trying to look healed and start becoming the force that resets the world? The bloodline awakens when sacred rage, ancestral memory, and forbidden gifts return together. There is a moment that happens long before the mind understands it, when the body starts remembering. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it begins with a dream. Sometimes it's a flash of energy while you're walking down the street. Other times it's a rage that bursts out of nowhere, so intense it doesn't feel like yours because it isn't. Not entirely. It's the moment when your bloodline begins to stir, when the suppressed power of your ancestors, the ones who walked with secrets carved into their bones, comes online again through you. This is not mythology. This is cellular inheritance. This is the second stage of what they've hidden, the reactivation of shadow lineage through memory, rage, and reclamation. You're not just healing personal trauma, you're decoding generational encryption. You are a living portal through which ancestral codes are reawakening. These aren't just wounds, they're gifts buried beneath centuries of suppression. Gifts that once defined entire spiritual orders. Gifts that were hunted, demonized, erased from the record because they couldn't be tamed. And now they're re-emerging not because it's trendy, but because the grid of the earth is changing. The density is collapsing. And the only frequencies that can anchor the new are those powerful enough to walk in both worlds. That's why the sacred rage rises. It's not dysfunction, it's activation. Rage is the language of truth denied. And for the dark chosen ones, it doesn't come from ego. It comes from memory. It comes from seeing clearly what others pretend not to. You walk into a room and feel the unspoken grief of a family line. You enter a relationship and carry the pain of patterns that go back generations. You aren't just triggered, you're tapped in. And when that rage erupts, it's not because you're broken. It's because something inside you knows this ends with you. Not because it should, but because it can. You weren't chosen for your lightness. You were chosen for your capacity to hold darkness without becoming it. That's what the lineage recognizes. That's why it chose you. Because you can carry the medicine that doesn't come with sweetness, the medicine that doesn't smell like roses, but burns like the truth. Sacred rage is not violence. It's not chaos. It's correction. It's the fire that refuses to let the lie live another day. The fire that says, no more pretending. The fire that doesn't just clear space, it restores justice. And with that rage comes the return of memory. You don't just remember events. You begin to remember essence. You feel your posture shift, your voice deepen, your instincts sharpen. You remember the rhythm of sacred ritual without ever having learned it. You remember symbols, places, languages, but more than that, you remember roles. The priest, the oracle, the gatekeeper, the destroyer, the watcher, the seer. You begin to sense that who you are now is only the surface. Beneath that surface are layers of mastery built over lifetimes, locked away until now because the world wasn't ready to receive what you carry. But you're not meant to wait anymore. The gate is open, and you are the code. You are the one who said yes before you were born. Yes to awakening in a world still sleeping. Yes to walking with power others pretend doesn't exist. Yes to remembering when remembering costs you your comfort, your reputation, your belonging. You said yes, not because you wanted pain, but because you carry something that's needed now more than ever. And with the memory and the rage comes the return of the forbidden gifts. You start knowing things you can't explain. You begin to see through illusions faster than ever before. Your dreams turn into initiations. Your body becomes a conduit. You don't just read energy, you influence it. You don't just hear guidance, you become it. This is the moment where power no longer whispers. It moves through your tone, through your choices, through the way you hold yourself even when everything else is falling apart. But here's what most people don't understand. These gifts don't come to be used in performance. They come to be embodied. They don't need to be proven. They need to be walked. That's why some of the most powerful dark chosen ones you'll ever meet are the ones who say the least. They don't talk about what they can do. They do it. They don't describe their power. They live in a way that makes it undeniable. So I ask you now not just to think about this, but to feel it in your field, in your breath, in your bloodline, waking up inside you what gift has been trying to move through you that you've silenced out of fear. What power is knocking at the door of your life, waiting for you to stop pretending you're not ready? Living sigils and lineage carriers, when your body becomes the temple and the transmission. There comes a point when the separation dissolves, when your practice is no longer a ritual you perform, it's who you are. When you stop trying to call in your power and realize your body has been carrying it this entire time. The temple is not out there. It's not a building, not a sacred circle, not even a remote retreat. You are the temple. You always have been. The body that has endured, held, shed, ached, broken, healed, and expanded, it is the architecture for the ancient code of your lineage to express itself. And this is the level of embodiment they never wanted you to reach. Because when you become the temple, you no longer seek entry into the sacred. You become the gate that others must pass through. As a dark chosen one, your body doesn't function like others. It's not just physical. It's a living sigil. A multi-dimensional container of coded memory and ancestral agreements. Every scar, every ache, every twitch and activation, it all means something. When your jaw tightens during certain conversations, when your spine tingles in certain environments, when your hands burn with heat, when someone sits too close, it's not random. It's not anxiety. It's communication. Your body is speaking the language of your soul lineage, alerting you, aligning you, or warning you. The question is, are you listening? To live as a lineage carrier is to become intimate with the signals of your own temple. You learn to trust what feels heavy and what feels clear. You stop needing proof. You start reading reality through sensation. That chill in your gut, that pull in your heart, that tightness in your chest when someone lies. These are not symptoms, they are keys. And once you learn to read your body like scripture, you begin decoding not just your own reality, but the energetic architecture around you. People will feel this shift. They will begin to speak more honestly in your presence, even if they don't know why. They will confess. They will avoid. They will be drawn in. Because your body, once fully inhabited by your lineage frequency, becomes a field of alignment, a walking sigil, an embodied command. You don't have to talk about your power anymore. You become the spell. You don't cast, it radiates. And that kind of coherence cannot be faked. It cannot be learned from a book. It is earned in the quiet moments of integrity, over and over, until your field becomes unshakable. And in this state, you start realizing something bigger. You are not just remembering your lineage, you are broadcasting it. You are sending signals back into the grid. You are waking up others who carry the same codes through frequency, not philosophy. You say a sentence, and someone thousands of miles away starts remembering. You post a photo and it triggers something in someone else's blood. That's the reach of true spiritual embodiment. It moves outside of space and time, because it isn't yours alone. It's collective. It's ancestral. It's alive. This is why dark chosen ones often walk alone before they come into their full field, because the activation is so strong that the world must reorganize around them. Old friends fall away. Families shift. Priorities dissolve. It's not because you're pushing them. It's because your body can no longer carry resonance with what is false. And once you embody your truth, you become incompatible with anything that distorts it. That's when your energy starts creating clarity in ways you don't even intend. Not because you're perfect, but because you're authentic. And that authenticity becomes a beacon for others in your bloodline to begin rising too. You are not just the descendant of the lineage. You are its current living expression. You are the breathing update, the embodied sigil, the translation of everything they couldn't say or do. And when you own that, not just in words, but in how you move, what you allow, what you command, your life becomes ceremony. Every step, every breath, every conversation. So now I want to ask you something that only your soul can answer honestly. What have you been waiting for permission to become, when your body has already been preparing you to walk as it? If you are the living temple, the active sigil, the carrier of a hidden bloodline, what would change today if you stopped looking for a doorway and realized you are the threshold? The last gatekeeper, full activation of shadow lineage codes, and the sacred responsibility of resetting reality. This is where the illusions end. Not because someone gave you the answers, but because your very being became the answer. Not because you were initiated by an external teacher, but because your own life, your pain, your patterns, your silence, your fire, was the initiation all along. When you reach this point, there's no going back to pretending. There's no more fitting in, no more seeking permission. You've become the gate. You've become the frequency. You've become the force that ancient shadow lineages have been waiting to awaken through. The final activation isn't about becoming something new. It's about dropping everything that isn't your code. Every mask you wore to survive. Every role you performed to stay safe. Every version of you that served your growth but can't walk with you now. You are not being punished by your solitude. You are being refined by it. Because when the final keys turn inside your field, the weight of what you carry becomes clear, and that weight is sacred. You are not just healing, you are resetting reality. Your energy no longer reacts to environments. It restructures them. You walk into spaces and the old stories unravel. You speak and false timelines begin to collapse. You feel truth rise in others who had long forgotten how to access it. Not because you tell them, but because your presence, once fully activated, makes denial impossible. This is the real work of the last gatekeeper, not to teach, but to remind. Not to explain, but to transmit. This power isn't loud. It's not flashy. It's not soft either. It is clear. It is exact. It is what reality itself listens to. And this is why most people will never reach this level. Because to carry this current, you must release everything that was built on distortion, even when that distortion felt like home. You must let relationships die, let comforts fall, let stories burn. Not because you're heartless, but because you're carrying the responsibility of correction. And that responsibility cannot be diluted by sentiment. When you live as the last gatekeeper, your life becomes a walking transmission. Your energy doesn't wait to be asked. It moves when necessary. You might speak, you might say nothing, but the field will always feel you. Others will notice their thoughts shifting in your presence, emotions surfacing, Realizations arriving. You won't need to prove anything. Your coherence will speak louder than your words ever could. And that coherence is not about being emotionless. It's about being unshakable in truth. You stop looking for guidance from above because you are the ground beneath others' feet. You stop wondering if you're doing enough because your presence does more in silence than others do in hours of performance. And you stop trying to make everyone comfortable because you know that real activation always begins with disruption. This isn't about building a brand. It's about building a field so clear, so ancient, so grounded in the original frequencies of earth and soul, that all distortion begins to dissolve in its presence. This is why you felt the weight your entire life, because your mission was never about you. It was always about what moves through you. You are the interface, the living bridge between shadow and source. The ones who came before you, those hidden, forgotten, demonized in history, they walk with you now, not behind you. In you, your movements are theirs. Your intuition is theirs. The fire that burns when you hear lies, it's theirs, and now it's yours. But you carry it with new clarity, new language, new form. And with it comes the final responsibility to remember who you are without apology. So here is the last and deepest question you must ask yourself with all hesitation burned away. If I truly accept that I am the last gatekeeper of my lineage, the one chosen to walk awake in a world built to stay asleep, then what must I no longer allow, no longer fear, and no longer delay? Because now you know. You are not becoming. You have arrived.